Have you ever gotten so interested in something that hours go by and it feels like minutes? Like you can't stop thinking about it, researching it, or talking about it even if you try. And then maybe a few weeks or months later, it's suddenly gone and replaced by something completely different. What if it's not a lack of discipline, but just the way your mind works? Hello, and welcome to episode 10 of Minds That Think Differently. I am your host, Amanda. For accessibility, I'll give a short visual description of myself. I have brown shoulder-length hair, and today I'm wearing a white shirt with red flowers on it. Today I will be talking about special interests and hyperfixations. If you have stories, questions, or would like to be on the podcast, please email connect@thinkdifferentpod.com, and more info can be found at my website, which will be linked in the show notes. With that, let's get started. Before we get into the main topic, I want to start with the mailbox segment. Today's question is, why do I get so obsessed with things and then suddenly lose interest? A lot of people experience this, especially if you're neurodivergent. It can feel confusing because when you're interested in something, you're really interested. You might spend hours on it, think about it constantly, and feel completely focused on it in a way that you don't feel for anything else. And then when that interest fades, it can feel like you failed or like you just gave up. But that's not actually what's happening. For many neurodivergent people, interest isn't consistent. It's intensity-based. Your brain locks onto something because it's stimulating, engaging, or meaningful. And when that stimulation changes, your focus can change too. That doesn't mean you can't commit to things. It just means that your motivation works differently than what most people expect. And understanding that difference is really important because it changes how you work with your brain instead of constantly feeling like you're fighting it. So in this episode, I will be talking about special interests and hyperfixations. Now, this is something that I did go into in episode 4, but this will be more of a deep dive into it. I want to start off with what they are for any new listeners. Special interests are long-term interests that a person can become very obsessed with, and they can become your whole life. They have positives such as expertise in one area and bringing neurodivergent joy, but they can also keep you from focusing on other parts of your life and can actually sometimes cause burnout and overwhelm. Hyperfixations are shorter-term interests that can become all-consuming, and then after a period of time, you move on, and it can be challenging because you spent a lot of time and sometimes money on your hyperfixations, and then you never touch them again. And just like special interests, hyperfixations can keep you from focusing on other parts of your life. You can have both hyperfixations and special interests, and you can have more than one special interest or hyperfixation at the same time. Also, it's not just autistic or ADHDers who have special interests and hyperfixations, but that's where it's most commonly seen. The difference between special interests and hyperfixations is usually in duration and intensity, but both involve deep focus and strong emotional connection. I'll give some quick examples. Special interests could be like a TV show, movie, art, coding, politics, books, a music genre, bird watching, studying a specific species of plants or ecosystem. These are just some examples. They can be anything. The difference from a normal interest, though, it's not just passively watching the TV show or movie, or learning about a certain species passively. It's binge watching the whole TV show or movie, becoming part of the fandom, learning all the actors, memorizing all the lines. It's not just learning about a specific species or bird watching. It's intensely studying until you learn everything about that species or topic. It's learning not just the surface level things, but doing deep level research. It's having an intense fascination on that species, and only reading books related to it or only watching media about it. It's finding documentaries about it and watching them over and over again. The earliest special interest I had was reading. Even as a baby, I've always loved reading, and I've always had a fascination with books and words, and I've always been advanced in reading as well. I used to read 100 to 150 books a year, but with school and this podcast, since I've started writing this podcast, I've actually stopped reading as much. but books have always been a special interest for me. Hyperfixation could look like binge watching an entire TV series, rewatching episodes repeatedly, memorizing character backstories, tracking release dates and debating plot theories, or listening to the same album or playlist over and over, or spending hours researching a niche topic like obscure historical facts, or studying complex systems like board game strategies or financial trends obsessively, collecting limited edition collectibles and cataloging them. With hyperfixation, though, this focus is usually very intense on one specific thing for a short period of time, and either gradually or suddenly it just stops. So I want to explain how special interests are different from neurotypical interests. Special interests are more intense. The purpose is self-soothing, regulation, or a way of understanding the world. They often influence every part of a person's life. It may lead to distress if you are unable to engage in that interest, and special interests consume a lot more time. On the other hand, hobbies are for reducing boredom. Hobbies are transient and can be easily picked up or put down. Special interests, on the other hand, it can cause a lot of discomfort or pain and can even cause meltdowns to someone to stop a special interest. An example of the difference between a hobby and a special interest would be a hobby is passively birdwatching in the backyard, whereas a special interest would be extensively studying and collecting data on a specific species of bird, watching documentaries about it, and learning everything you can about that one species of bird. I also want to give a quick language note. Not everyone likes the term special interest because the word special can be used in a derogatory way towards disabled people. Some other preferences are specific interests or intense interests. Special interests can also be known as SPINs, strong personal interests. However, special interests is the one that's most well known and recognized, and it's the one I'll be using throughout this episode. Just know if you ever hear those words that they are interchangeable. The core difference between hyperfixations and hobbies is while hobbies feel easy to start and stop, hyperfixations feel compulsive and out of control. Hobbies improve well-being, while hyperfixation often leads to neglecting responsibilities and self-care. Hobbies are long-term interests, while hyperfixations are intense but can be replaced quickly. Hobbies can become hyperfixations or special interests. Hobbies can become hyperfixations when you spend a lot of money or time on it unexpectedly, you lose track of time consistently, or you feel distressed if you can't engage in it, or if it impacts your ability to manage work, school, and relationships. Now that we've talked about what special interests and hyperfixations are, I want to dive into why they matter. Engaging with special interests provides stress relief and can offer emotional regulation by providing stability and comfort. Special interests can also provide confidence, self-esteem, and are an important part of the person's identity. Special interests can give you expertise and certain skills that can directly translate to school and work life sometimes. Many people often can make a job out of their special interest. Special interests can also lead to connections being formed with others due to your special interest and can lead to lasting friendships. Hyperfixations matter because they can lead to enhanced creativity, expertise, and problem solving. Hyperfixations can lead to joy and personal fulfillment. Hyperfixations are also important because it's a unique way autistic and ADHDers' brains think and work. Like special interests, hyperfixations can help foster community and can give shared understandings. Hyperfixations can sometimes foster special interests as well. Next, I want to talk about the benefits and challenges of special interests and hyperfixations. I'll start with special interests. Some of the benefits of special interests is that they're associated with good well-being, they bring a lot of joy, and they rarely affect functioning. They can lead to careers, they can provide a community of those with the same interests, thus reducing loneliness, and it can be a way of escaping and recharging and regulating after meltdowns or overwhelm, and they can provide structure and predictability. Personally, I feel like my special interests really shape who I am as a person. Just like me being autistic shapes me as a person, My special interests are an integral part of who I am as a person. My biggest special interest is one that I've developed later in life, but it's my biggest passion, and that's languages, linguistics, and cultures. I started learning about languages on my own as early as 4th grade when I started learning German and Spanish. In 6th grade, I took this class exploring world cultures. I loved it so much, and I realized that I couldn't choose one language, so I took both German and Spanish. And now I've started taking French and ASL as well as self-studying 3 other languages on my own. Language is such a big passion of mine that I want to be an interpreter as my job. Language is a special interest where my passion has never waned for it. I want to become fluent in at least 10 languages during my lifetime. I'm studying 8 right now, but only 4 of them in school and the others independently. Special interests can also lead to challenges, however. They can impact functioning negatively at times because they can become so intense it feels impossible to think about anything else. Other people can judge you for your special interests or talking excessively about them. Meltdowns may occur if you're unable to engage with your special interests. They can also affect your health because you may neglect your hygiene while engaging with them. Now let's shift to hyperfixations. Some of the benefits of hyperfixations are that you can learn new subjects or skills quicker due to increased focus or interest. It can also increase your performance at work or school. Research suggests that individuals who hyperfixate can perform better than others under normal circumstances. Hyperfixations can also lead to innovation and make opportunities to connect with others based on your interests. Some of the challenges with hyperfixations are being distracted from other tasks or losing contact with the outside world. It can strain relationships. Hyperfixation can also cause burnout and sometimes financial strain if you find yourself impulsively spending a lot of money on your hyperfixations and then suddenly they just end. You can also experience time distortion during hyperfocus. You can also experience time distortion or time blindness during hyperfixations, and this can result in lost time or missed obligations. Hyperfixations can also lead to difficulties with task switching, and it can leave you with a lot of unfinished projects and abandoned hobbies. Next, I want to talk about losing a special interest. First, I want to give an example of what this might look like. You might experience a sudden or gradual loss of interest in a passion that once consumed you. First, I want to acknowledge that it's normal for special interests to fluctuate from burnout, mental health challenges, or life changes. Losing a special interest doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you or that you can never get it back. Losing a special interest can feel like losing part of yourself, and it can be a very painful journey. The thing you always turn to for comfort is no longer there anymore, or it doesn't bring you that same level of comfort. That can feel really disorienting. Special interests can also become monotonous or stagnant when you've learned all you can about the topic or when there's no challenges. If you've lost a special interest, it's important to practice self-compassion during this time, take breaks, and give yourself time to rest. You may have feelings of guilt for not being able to engage in your special interest anymore. Pushing yourself too hard to maintain enthusiasm for your interest could make it worse. Allowing yourself to step away is one of the best things you can do. After some time, you may be able to return to your interest with renewed enthusiasm and passion. Understanding the root cause of your special interest fading can be beneficial. Does it feel monotonous or boring, or is the cause something else like tiredness or burnout? You can re-engage with your special interests later on. Just because you lost it now doesn't mean that it's gone forever. Losing a special interest could also lead to you finding a new interest. This has happened with me personally several times because I've lost several special interests. A special interest I had was interior design. I always loved when we designed my room, and my bedroom had many themes throughout my childhood. I grew up obsessed with interior design games, DIY videos, and interior design videos. Then I started watching HGTV and learning everything I possibly could about all the different types of design and all the different styles. and I started learning how to really be an interior designer. And that's when I decided I wanted to be an interior designer for my job. Then, all of a sudden, around the middle to the end of last year, I lost that special interest. I still enjoy interior design, but I no longer see myself doing it as a job, and it's not really something that I research or engage with anymore. It doesn't seem as interesting to me as it once had, and I could no longer see it as a career. I believe losing this special interest was a good thing for me because it led to me discovering and exploring my other special interests more in law, genetics, psychology, and neurodivergence and disability. Another special interest I'm losing is reading. This is a really recent one I'm losing because of the amount of work in my life and burnout. I haven't finished a book in months. I used to read at least 20 books a month because I would fill all of my free time with it. But lately, when I have free time, starting a book feels like a daunting task, and I usually end up working on this podcast instead. This is an interest I'm currently struggling with losing because I love reading, and I think it's one I will be able to re-engage with, since I'm losing this interest due to burnout. Losing special interests can feel scary, but with proper support and self-compassion, rest, and exploration, it's possible to navigate. Rediscovering passion can open new doors to personal growth. I want to talk about coping with losing a special interest. First, you have to allow yourself to grieve. Acknowledge that losing that interest is a significant loss, and then understand the root cause. Understanding the root cause plays a crucial role in how you will cope and move forward. If the cause is due to burnout, focus on self-care and explore low-stakes hobbies, practice mindfulness and meditation to manage the emotional emptiness. Now I want to talk a little more about my personal experience with special interests. Another one of my special interests I don't really have a name for. I sort of group these things together: psychology, neurodivergence, disability, and genetics. Ever since I was diagnosed with autism, I started researching everything I could about neurodivergence. And then that got me really interested in psychology. And then I learned that neurodivergence and autism has genetic roots. And I've always been really interested in the brain and how the brain works. It was after I lost my interior design special interest and started considering other careers that I started thinking about being a genetic counselor or a geneticist, and that's my backup job. To go along with this special interest, a lot of the reason I'm making this podcast and have spent hundreds of hours on it is because neurodivergence and disability, all the things I talk about on this podcast, are special interests of mine, and this podcast really makes me so happy to create. I have a lot of special interests, and that makes it really hard to figure out what I want to do with my life, because I have so many intense passions. I can't choose between genetics, psychology, language, and law, just like I couldn't choose just one language to learn. I've also had quite a few hyperfixations, including names, certain TV shows, lists, video games, and more. Before we continue, let's take a short sensory break. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by how intense your interests can be, or even judged through them, this is just a moment to pause. You don't need to push anything away right now. Just take a breath. Let yourself exist without needing to be productive or focused. Your brain isn't too much, it just works differently. I'll be right here when you're ready to continue. Now I'm going to talk about something that relates closely to hyperfixations and why we spend so much time on them, and that's time blindness. Imagine that you put a bagel in the toaster. You think, I have 2 minutes, I'll just check my emails. The next thing you know, the smell of smoke fills the kitchen. The toaster popped and you didn't even hear it because your brain was 1,000 miles away. Or imagine you start running a bath. You go to your room to get your pajamas and you see a book and flip it open while you wait. The next thing you know, the bathtub has overflowed because your brain's internal timer never went off to tell you to turn the faucet off. This is something that's known as time blindness. It's very common for people with ADHD, and it's the inability to sense how much time has passed and estimate the time needed to get something done. Now, this can relate to hyperfixations, because you can be hyperfixated and have time blindness. And this could be a real issue because it can lead to procrastination and being late, not because you're disrespectful of other people's time or because you didn't use your time wisely, but because you sat down thinking, this will just take 5 minutes, and there you are 3 hours later, not realizing how much time has passed. Time blindness connects to the duration of how much time a person spends on their interest. They might spend the whole day hyperfixating or working on their special interest and not even realize it. So now that you have an understanding of what time blindness is, how can you manage it? Using visual timers like sand, analog, or digital timers that show you how much time has passed instead of trying to remember in your mind, setting multiple alarms for important deadlines or appointments, and breaking projects down into smaller tasks to make them feel less daunting. It's not just hyperfixation either. Autistic people can become just as engrossed in their special interests. Time blocking can be very helpful to manage time, schedule specific time slots for interests, set firm boundaries, set a specific start and end time for your interest, ask friends or family to remind you or hold you accountable, and alternate between intense focus on your interests and other essential activities, and prioritize essential tasks. Personally, I do not struggle with time blindness, but something that helps me with time management is a prioritized task list where I write down what needs to be done immediately and how long it will take, and once I have all essential tasks done, remaining time is dedicated to my special interests. Then I want to talk about how to support yourself and others. First, let's talk about how to support yourself. Instead of stopping abruptly when the timer goes off, give yourself a transition period. This allows your brain to downshift instead of crashing. Tell yourself you can engage with your special interest without spending any money for 1 week. If you lose a special interest or hyperfixation, understand that you didn't waste time. You gained a deep experience for as long as your brain needed it. Next, I want to talk about how to support someone else in your life who has these interests. Validate their joy. When you see them lit up by a topic, acknowledge that joy. Practice parallel play or body doubling. Sometimes the best way to support someone isn't to talk to them, but just to be near them. Just sitting in the room while they work on their interests helps connect them to the world without breaking their focus. Remember, support is about balance. Make sure to set your own boundaries as well. Then I want to talk about infodumping and monotropism. Let's talk about monotropism. So the monotropism theory is that the mind functions as an interest system, where we are all drawn to many things and these interests help guide our attention. Autistic individuals often have deep, sustained focus on a narrower range of interests or activities than non-autistic people or allistic people. Allistic people have polytropic minds, meaning they can easily spread their attention across multiple channels. Monotropism was first coined by Dr. Dina Murray in 1992. Mono means one or single, and tropism means channel, so monotropism means single channel. Monotropism is for special interests what time blindness is to hyperfixations. Monotropism means that a person can only focus on a few things at a time, leading to deep focus on special interests. Monotropic split is when the mind is pushed beyond its natural capacity to share attention across multiple things, resulting in anxiety, overwhelm, and exhaustion. Monotropic individuals do not have multiple channels to communicate from, so we are more likely to communicate through one channel, engaging in clear and literal communication, going deep into an area of passion or expertise, which is infodumping. This is what creates the double empathy problem that I've spoke about in earlier episodes. Neurodivergent people are communicating through one channel, while neurotypical people are communicating through multiple channels. This is the root cause of the double empathy problem, where neurodivergent to neurodivergent communication works, but when it's neurodivergent to neurotypical communication, that's where misunderstanding arises. The double empathy problem is fundamentally due to communicating through different channels. Now let's talk about infodumping, which is a way for autistic people to share their special interests with others. Now that we understand that neurodivergent people communicate through one channel, we can understand infodumping, which is where an autistic person talks excessively and in detail about a topic involving their interests and patterns, usually special interests. It's a way for autistic individuals to express what they are passionate about with those they care about most. The autistic person may talk for hours at a time, regardless of the other person's interest level. This can lead to neurotypical people interpreting infodumping as poor turn taking, social deficits, being interruptive, repetitive, verbose, and lacking awareness of social conventions. So, why do autistic people infodump? It's a way to initiate an interaction or start a conversation. It can be a coping mechanism for dealing with feelings. As thoughts build up, they may need to be expressed, and some may feel as if they might explode if they don't share their thoughts. It's also just an authentic and natural way of self-expression. Receptive communication for infodumping is something that's not talked about enough. So if someone is infodumping to you, what do you do? If someone is infodumping, show real interest. Ask follow-up questions to show you care. You can set soft limits. If necessary, guide the conversation into a topic you both share, or suggest writing. Be patient and kind. If you can't listen to the infodumping at the moment due to other pressing matters, kindly let the person know that you value what they have to say and would love to engage with them but are unable to do so at this time. Help them connect with others who are like-minded. Use nonverbal cues like eye contact or nodding to show that you are engaged. You can ask clarifying questions if the topic is complex. Encourage a two-way discussion and offer praise and acknowledgement. Autistic people who are non-speaking can still infodump. They may just do so in a different way, like through an AAC device. To promote inclusivity and understanding around infodumping, you can educate yourself for a compassionate approach and encourage others. Promote awareness around the value of information sharing and encourage peers to be more accepting and supportive. Adapt communication styles. Using more clear and direct communication may be helpful. Creating support networks. Groups where individuals can feel accepted can promote inclusivity. Finally, I want to end with some myths about special interests and hyperfixations. I'm going to start with some myths around special interests. A common misconception about special interests is that they're only about science or technology. This isn't true. Autistic people can have special interests in any topic, from stationery to fashion, video games, or really any topic. There are so many different special interests out there. Another misconception is that just having a special interest means the person is a savant. This isn't true. Remember that only between 10 and 30% of the autistic community has savant syndrome. Most people just have a deep passion and want to learn everything they can about that topic. Another myth is that people only have one special interest. This isn't true. For me, I've shared throughout this episode that I have multiple special interests, and I've gained and lost some over the years. Some autistic people don't have special interests at all. Next, I want to talk about myths surrounding hyperfixations. Hyperfixation is not a choice. People don't choose what they hyperfixate on or for how long. Hyperfixation is driven by the brain's reward system. It's also not the same as having a hobby, since it's an obsessive, all-consuming intensity. Hyperfixation is also not the same as hyperfocus. Hyperfocus is an intense focus on a specific task, and when that task is completed, the period of intense focus ends. Hyperfixations don't have exact goals or endpoints where the fixation starts and ends. While hyperfocus and hyperfixations can resemble special interests, they're not the same thing due to the period of time they last for. Hyperfixations last for a short period of time, weeks or months, while special interests usually last for years, although it depends on the person. Hyperfixation also doesn't present the same in every person. If you've ever been told you care too much about something or that you just need to move on, I want you to know that having strong interests is not a flaw. It's part of how you experience the world. The goal isn't to get rid of that. It's to understand it and learn how to balance the world in a way that supports you instead of overwhelming you. Whether your passions and interests last a week or for years, they matter because they're important to you and who you are. Your interests aren't something that you need to apologize for. They help you learn, connect with others, regulate your emotions, and bring you joy. The goal is to learn how to support having intense interests while still taking care of yourself. Now I will do a short recap of everything I discussed in this episode. I talked about the difference between special interests and hyperfixations. I gave some examples of each. I talked about the benefits and challenges of special interests and hyperfixations and why they both matter. I talked about burnout and losing a special interest. I talked about monotropism and infodumping. I talked about how to support someone with special interests and hyperfixations and how to show them you care. And finally, I ended with some common myths surrounding both special interests and hyperfixations. Then I will end with an affirmation. The affirmation for this episode is, my passions are not something I need to hide. They're part of what makes me who I am. And the question for this episode is, what are your special interests, hyperfixations, or just something you care deeply about, and how can you support that interest without letting it overwhelm you? You can think about this on your own or email your response. Also, if you have special interests or hyperfixations that you want to share, I would love to hear them. I would like to start a segment called the Special Interest Spotlight, where I will be sharing a listener's special interest every few episodes and their story about it. In the next episode, I will be starting my series on invisible disabilities. So the next episode will be part 1 of the series, Foundations of Invisible Disabilities and What They Are. If this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear about your special interests or hyperfixations. Please email me at connect@thinkdifferentpod.com. And if you know someone who has a strong interest they've been judged for or misunderstood about, consider sharing this episode with them. It might help them feel seen in a way they haven't before. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Follow in your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for listening to Minds That Think Differently, and I'll see you next time.